Hey guys, Fletch the Football Observer here, and today's Fletch Talks video is going to be part 2 of my mini-series of my Premier League predictions for the upcoming 2019-2020 season. We've already talked about European places, the teams that I believe will finish within the Champions League and Europa League places for the following season. And part 2 is going to be about teams that I think will be within the relegation scrap for this coming season. So without further ado, let's begin. We're going to begin with arguably the weakest promoted squad of the three, and that's saying that with all due respect, in Sheffield United. There's always a chance you could underestimate them and they can go on to surprise people by surviving, but it's unlikely that they will defy the odds and the predictions and are more than likely to be set to be one of the three teams to be relegated to the Championship for the following season. They haven't spent a large amount of money in the summer in comparison to their rivals that are likely to be within a relegation scrap with them, but they have identified that they will need goals in order to attempt a survival bid, purchasing a couple of wingers and a striker. They've also recruited the experience of Phil Jagielka, which is a little bit of a romantic element to this story given that he used to play for United 12 years ago. And they've also brought Ravel Morrison, a free transfer, a guy who's incredibly frustrating because he possesses a large amount of talent but has never shown it on a consistent basis, and you can tell that by looking over his career and how it has gone so far. So this is a huge gamble by the club in that respect. But let's face it, they're facing a true uphill struggle. The quality they have doesn't appear to be enough to survive in the Premier League. And like I said, yes, they could defy the odds and stranger things have happened, but it's unlikely to happen. And my advice to Sheffield United would be to be loud during the home games, make Bramall Lane a fortress, and most of all, enjoy the experience. We're going to continue with the promoted sides as we come to Championship winners Norwich, who are yet another contender for relegation this season. But will their return to the Premier League genuinely be short-lived? Last season, Norwich's season was constantly eventful, to say the least. Norwich's games last campaign became notorious for having plenty of goals and a lot of late drama. But the difference between the Championship and the Premier League is a bit of a step up in quality. Norwich probably won't get the types of goals they were scoring last season or getting any type of that late drama of the last campaign as much as they probably will or won't this season, or even any of that going in their favour, to say the least. If they're going to survive, they're going to need to make Carrow Road a fortress, and of course they'll be hoping Timo Pukki hits the ground running in England's top tier division, as his goals last season were a major reason why Norwich got promoted in the first place, as those goals all tallied up for him to become the Championship's top goal scorer. But the question is, will a striker who did so well in the Championship last season and with good home support be enough for the Canaries to survive in the Premier League for the forthcoming campaign? Aston Villa, the third of the promoted sides, are next on this list despite having themselves quite the active summer in the transfer window. Villa have already spent over 100 million this summer already, signing a total of 10 players, and if rumours and reports are to be believed, they're not looking to slow down between now and deadline day. But is it a case of quantity over quality? Last season we saw Fulham follow a similar path. They got promoted back into the Premier League and used over 100 million themselves on preparing for life back in England's top tier division, only to have a dreadful season that ended with 3 different managers and ultimately a return to the Championship. Villa are in danger of following suit. A lot of new players that will probably need time to gel, but Villa will be hoping they can hit the ground running in what looks to be a bit of an uphill struggle for the newly promoted side this season. It's also a big season for Jack Grealish. Returning to the Premier League with Villa, he's been the subject of much speculation down the years, linking him with a move away from Villa, and a return to the Premier League looked his likely destination for some time. And this season, it's time to show how much he's matured and grown during the 3 seasons he spent with Villa in the Championship. So it's a big season for him, it's a big season for Villa as a whole, and it's a chance to reassert themselves with England's top tier division, but the question is, will they be able to do so? Now that we've moved past the promoted sides, let's look at some of the other sides that are in danger of being dragged into a relegation battle for this season. And next on the list, we land on Brighton, a Brighton side that just survived in the Premier League last campaign by the skin of their teeth. And in the wake of that season, they went on to sack Chris Hughton and go in a different direction by hiring Graham Potter as their new manager, a man who last season was managing Championship side Swansea. This could be seen as a poor mistake on Brighton's part if things don't pan out the way they're expecting. The second half of last season was poor by the Seagulls, yes, they had a string of poor results and they were dragged right into a relegation scrap. But did it warrant them to take the action they did by sacking Hughton and putting Potter in his place? And the next question is Potter ready for the task at hand at the Amex Stadium? Brighton attempting to head in a different direction with a new manager could ultimately cost them a spot in England's top tier division. There's not been a lot to suggest the Seagulls have done anything special in the transfer market to suggest anything but a relegation fight is on the cards for the Seagulls this year. And again, they'll probably have to rely on Glenn Murray. He may be getting older in terms of a footballing age, with all due respect, but he will again be called upon to grab as many goals as he can and use his experience to help Brighton survive for the upcoming campaign. Whilst defensively, Lewis Dunk and Shane Duffy at the heart of the Seagulls' defence will be just as important this season as Murray. But the question is this: will Brighton regret sacking Chris Hughton, or was it actually a smart move and be proven so by securing another year within England's top flight division? For our next contender for relegation next season, we land on Newcastle. What a roller coaster ride it has been for the Magpies during the pre-season break. Pre-season began with such optimism as the dawn of a club takeover was reportedly close to happening, and then fast forward a month or so later and the talks of a takeover have been replaced by silence. Rafael Benitez had left the club after the Magpies failed to renegotiate his contract and was then replaced by Steve Bruce of all people, and there's only been one signing, a striker who's arrived from Hoffenheim called Joelinton, whose arrival meant Newcastle have smashed their record transfer fee. If Benitez had stayed, Newcastle wouldn't have even made this list of teams in danger. But due to him leaving and Steve Bruce being put in charge, I couldn't ignore them here. Immediate question is, where are the goals going to come from? The Magpies will be hoping their new striker can hit the ground running instantly, a man who scored 11 goals in 35 games for Hoffenheim last season. Other than him though, Miguel Almiron will also be required to chip in with goals, but other than that, the squad isn't oozing with goals from other areas. Also, Steve Bruce doesn't have a great track record in the Premier League. His resume isn't a long list of managerial achievements full of silverware or any kind of progress with the team. It's certainly a downgrade from the previous manager, to say the least. Newcastle's only saving grace this season may be that they survived by other teams simply being worse than them. But are there other teams in this list worse than the Magpies? The next team on this list that I believe are relegation candidates this season is a team that I believe is worth mentioning because I think that they're within this discussion year in, year out, and that club is Crystal Palace. Simply put, they're a frustrating side to watch because of their inconsistency. On their day, they can very much play and put up a fight against the best in the league, but the week after, they can lose to a team that's either around them or below them in disappointing circumstances. This season though may be a little different, as they could be set to lose their talisman Wilfried Zaha, and that would be a huge blow dealt to the Eagles before the season's even begun. It's heavily rumoured that Zaha wants to leave Palace, and if he does leave, Palace will lose another key player in a summer that's already seen Aaron Wan-Bissaka leave Selhurst Park in favour of Old Trafford and Manchester United. If the winger does leave, then it's a question of where are the goals and creativity going to come from, as many times down the years Zaha has been relied upon most to provide both those elements for Palace. And of course, there's a chance that Palace could pull the rabbit out of the hat here and either keep the winger for another year at least, or even go on to replace him with another player that's going to help boost their survival bid, but they're just a case of maybes for now. And I think the real question here is, regardless of whether he stays or goes, are Palace able to survive in the Premier League for at least another season? Other outsider bets that you can throw into the mix of possible contenders for relegation include the likes of Bournemouth. Yes, I put them in my European places video as a possible contender for that too, but you can never quite tell with this club, and the same of course goes to Watford as well, who I also mentioned in that same video could finish anywhere in the league excluding a top 4 finish. And I guess you can also throw Burnley into the mix as well, but they'd have to have an extremely poor season for this to become a reality, as they have more quality and experience than most of the teams in this list. So just a few names to look out for and just maybe consider if you're planning on making a few predictions of your own. So we've analysed several teams that I believe to be likely candidates for relegation this season, and now it's time for my predictions of who I think will be the ones to be relegated down to the Championship for the upcoming campaign. I honestly think Sheffield United are the first club down. I think a lack of quality in key areas will ultimately hurt them, and I think that they will put up a hell of a fight for their fans to be proud of for the upcoming season, but I think it will be a similar sort of story to how Huddersfield's stay in the Premier League went. They weren't exactly awful, Huddersfield, they just lacked quality in key areas, and that is honestly how I see Sheffield United's return to the Premier League going down for them. The next team to go down, I think, will be Brighton and Hove Albion. We've seen this story several times and it very rarely works out, where a club decides to take stability and change it as a gamble to push on for bigger things. I think this will be another case of that here. They can't keep relying on Glenn Murray for goals, and this might be a season where they come undone and lose their status as a Premier League club. And the third and final club that I believe will be relegated this season is Newcastle United. I do believe it's a toss-up between them and Norwich, and if Wilfried Zaha does leave Crystal Palace, then I think you can throw them into this mini battle as well. But I think with goals seemingly in short supply at Newcastle, a club with uncertainty off the pitch, and a manager who I think is championship quality at best in charge of the club, I don't see it being a pleasant season at St James's Park for the upcoming campaign, and therefore they're my pick to be the third club relegated to the Championship. And that wraps up this video on my predictions for the upcoming 2019-2020 Premier League relegation battle. But of course, this is just one man's thoughts and one man's opinions on this particular subject. I want to know what you think. What do you make of my analysis on the teams that I've mentioned? Do you agree with my predictions, or do you have predictions of your own? I'd love to read your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below regarding this subject. And of course, remember to look out for my third video on this particular mini-series in which I talk about the Premier League title race. That will be coming out very, very soon. Otherwise, hit that like button on the way out if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things would be greatly appreciated. And of course, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch the Football Observer. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I will speak with you all again soon in another video.